Thank you very much. Thank you very much. First of all, thank you for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here. I don't know what I'm doing here, actually, because I talk about history and you are producing future, as I said to Ida. So my role here is something like destabilizing some kind of certainties and a situation that you find in the present. But as unfortunately we historians have to do is to make the reality more complex than it is. And the only way to describe Rijeka, in my opinion, after you have also heard what Marije Mrduljaš told you yesterday, is of course dealing with its history and its incredible depth of its history. It's maybe even the history is more complex than its present. Rijeka, as a matter of fact, in my opinion, can be described really only in geopolitical terms. And this is something that I would like briefly to talk about in a story of 2 centuries or less than 2 centuries of the history of modern Rijeka. In order to describe this complexity, we have to deal with the geopolitical interest that in the higher Adriatic were addressed on Rijeka. Not only Rijeka. Rijeka is a smaller brother of another city that is very close to here. It's called Trieste. Smaller brother, because you will see that Rijeka is founded and developed on the model of Trieste, and of course produced a kind of local specificity that Marije for sure explained very well yesterday. What I am looking at is nothing else than the terrace where I lived for a couple of years and the top of the socialist vertical building, a marvelous view on this Gulf of Rijeka that we call Kvarner, and where you can see exactly the 4 geopolitical, this is a very actual word now, geopolitical presences in physical terms in this area. The first one is, the pointer is, No. Oh my God, okay.
Ovo je tu.
Ne, pointer sam mislio.
Mislim da je ovo crveno.
Aha,
evo
ga.
Gore.
Yes. So this is the, let's say, Croatian isotropic city, so the city that does not produce urbanity. The highway, a very important infrastructure. Then we have the socialist, of course, residential system. We have the presence of this church, extremely important implementation of the Italian power at a certain moment in visible terms over the city, to dominate on what? And this is the subject of this small presentation, the presence of this. This is the Austro-Hungarian Rijeka, and especially 2 elements which are crucial to understand the geopolitical interest of Rijeka. One is the railway, and the other one is the port. This, let's say, presence of all this physical presence of these remnants of this geopolitical interest are also present in the city center. Wherever we go, we can see the remnants, the reliquia, I call them, of all these systems. Now, fascism, socialism, and of course the dimension, the incredible dimension of the Austro-Hungarian, especially the Hungarian presence. This geopolitical, let's say, conflict will be examined in short, but of course we have to overlap it with the core of the topic, no? of the inhabitants of the city. This is one of the most, let's say, funny, or for me most interesting pictures I have found during these researches. This is a brewery in the city center of Rijeka, and you can see the labels, the stigmate, of all the presence of all the populations and cultures and identities, which is an incredibly complex thing. Identity is something that it was invented substantially in the moment when Rijeka was founded in the international level. So identity is, as we know, a cultural construct that comes from the 19th century, which left on this facade a series of signs. Italians, Slovaks, Germans, Hungarian, Italian, and of course Slavic, which is another complex thing between Croatian and especially Slovenian. But this complexity that formed Rijeka, this richness, this incredible, let's say, mixture of population was destroyed, no? Depleted, cleared. We can invent any kind of words in a series of crises that happened during the 20th century. This century that we historians somehow call the history of the simplification, no? The history of a process of eliminating, no? What is an obstacle in the process of definition of identities that happened in the series of conflicts. I will very quickly go through these moments that brought, let's say, Rijeka to an unprecedented level of, let's say, importance. We will see why, and of course, its decadiment that happened during the time. What was the first geopolitical interest in Rijeka? Well, I will try not to complicate too much, but we are, as you know, here. This is Trieste. We are inside the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Actually, it's not yet. We are in the beginning, before the 1867. We are inside the Habsburg monarchy, in which Rijeka, as you will see in the next planimeter, is substantially an insignificant town on the left, on the eastern part of the Adriatic. But something happened in 1866. Austria loses two wars, two very important wars, that start it let's say, to demolish its integrity that was built during centuries. One is a very important war that in Shadova, Austria loses against Prussia, against the Germans, with two conflicts of German identity, no? That I will talk about something about that, because it will be also, we will feel it here in Rijeka too. And the other is the burning and growing Risorgimento Italiano, so the formation of the modern Italy on the other side. These two wars force Austria to leave, let's say, to break, to leave, no, the energies that were boiling inside. What was the biggest boiling energy? The Hungarian component of the Austrian, and decides to leave, let's say, to split this empire in two. And why I'm telling you this? Of course, because Rijeka, as you know, probably from Mario yesterday, becomes the first and major port of this Hungarian part of the, as you can see in this map, very important element of big, let's say, territory of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, becomes its only main port. But why? Why this is so important? But because while Austro-Hungary is losing these wars, while Austro-Hungary is practically starting its fragmentation that will finish in 1918 with the First World War, well, on the other side, it is a minor promoter, but still a promoter of a most important infrastructural work that has been done in the 19th century, and that is the excavation of Suez. France works majorly with Napoleon III, with the major financiation, but Austria is present. Austria is present in many terms, not only financial, but also from the point of view of the engineers. This is what actually interests us more, engineers, architects, and especially those who have been, this is a complex story, but in which way, because the identities, no? or let's say these figures that are operating as engineers here are Italian, are Czechs, are no Germans. No? The most important guy that will promote and conceive this excavation is called Luigi Negrelli, who is an Italian engineer from Padova, but in the highest hierarchy of the Austro-Hungarian, Austrian first and later Austro-Hungarian system, is the guy that operates with this colossal thing. Of course, we know today about the strategic importance of Suez. Imagine that in the 1869, what was no? In the moment when we had a hegemonist, international hegemonist, which was UK, that its entire commerce was going below Africa. Now everything goes here, from Bab el-Mandeb to Suez. No? This part here started to be incredibly, incredibly important. And again, what is the problem for us? Well, Austro-Hungarian founds two cities, let's say Trieste as the model, as the first city that promotes, no, tries to captivate and take this colossal commerce that will, starting from this year, will go through the Mediterranean Sea. So a part of this incredible global movement had to be readdressed in competition with Rotterdam, with all Hanseatic republics, here in Trieste, and Rijeka too. Rijeka, in this sense, no, if we observe it through this geopolitical and economical interest, starts to answer about its form. No? A city that I call substantially insignificant from the point of view of dimensions of economic importance. Of course, it was always present there, but at a certain moment explodes. Explodes thanks again, thanks to these two infrastructures. One is the port that you have already seen, and this entire system that still today dominates the relationship, and you are studying between the city and the sea of these things. And this is the real 19th century, let's say, modernization of the territory. The sea, as the main, as always still today, is the main vehicle of the globalization, no? And the second factor, which came from the railways. The railways that in 1873, so the year, 4 years after the Ausgleich, connects Rijeka with Vienna and Budapest. So you can imagine that this crucial factor, no, in terms of this international scale, everything goes over a condition that these empires find in this location. And this is the factor of the national identities. No? This is a colossal problem of Rijeka and of this part of Europe. And this is the formation of identities that live in these territories. This is a famous map by Serbian geographer Jovan Cvic, who was one of the pioneers, no, of documentation of the complexity of something that in these years was founded. And this is the idea of nationality, the idea of becoming somebody. No? But as we have seen, here is extremely complex. The Italians are not Italians. The Italians here in Rijeka are those who don't identify themselves in the nation of the Italian Risorgimento, but in a completely different idea of Italy. But this is completely something completely different. So inside this Austro-Hungarian complexity, we have modernity, no, that is emerging with infrastructures, etc., and the incredible tensions that are rising in Europe in these years. Let's see the infrastructure. Well, this infrastructure is another incredible thing. We are talking about the first Alpine railway in Europe. You will say, who cares? No, Europe is full of railways. The railway net, starting from the end of the 18th century, dominates the entire, let's say, northern continent. But if you see this map, you will not find any railway that goes through Alps. Why? Because it's extremely complicated to bring with locomotives going up to 1,500 meters and going down, excavating galleries. Dynamites were not used still so you had to dig tunnels manually. So who did this? Well, the engineers of Suez, who parallelly, this structure of another Italian, it was the chief of this operation. His name was Carl Gega, from Padova, too, from the School of Engineering of Padova, who miraculously, at the end of his career, obtained the name Karl von Ritter, no? And died and was buried in Vienna. Is one of the most important figures of Vienna in the late 19th century. Well, he conceived this incredible thing that we don't see anymore. Yes, in terms of postcards, but if we look through technological and let's say the aspect of modernity, today we are not able to build such a thing in only 14 years. 700 kilometers from Trieste to Vienna in 14 years through the Alps. How it was possible? Well, it was possible, of course, we are talking about a series of railways, a net of railways, which was a public geopolitical decision of Austria, I remember, enormous investment in an infrastructural thing that would change the relationship between the empire and the world. Bridges that we still today look as probably one of the most beautiful examples of engineering in any kind of materials. This is a famous bridge in Solcan, close to Nova Gorica, today, that connects Trieste, it's not important now, which is still today the largest with arch in stone in the world. So infrastructural gestures that were planned in detail. With one of the expression of the modern planning that starts from the 1840s and finishes in the 50s and so on, that was designed and planned till the detail in any kind of structural system at the time that was known. And this was iron, this was stone, even bridges in wood with typologies that could be applied on any kind of geographical situation. Momentary bridges, no, that could be replaced in wood, but also still the smallest infrastructural, let's say, problem. No? They faced it and they tried to resolve it with the modern planning. What does it mean, the modern planning? That means that you try to project in the future all the problems that you may encounter in such a complex situations. With incredible drawings to realize what? To realize a railway system that in such a short amount of time that had, of course, to bring the goods from one side to the empire to the other, but of course also for military reasons and everything else. And this project, which is called Südbahn, no, the Southern Railways, starts, of course, from Vienna and starts with all infrastructure, but also with architecture, with the presence in the city of, doesn't exist anymore, they demolished it, but the Südbahn, which is let's say, the most monumental, and then we go scaling till the smaller city of Maribor and even small of Matulje, maybe you know, and we have entire parts of new, let's say, worker city that arise around this infrastructure. So it's not something that affects Rijeka, affects the entire territory. No? Slovenia, for instance, changes the capital, no? From a smaller city of Ptuj, which was the cultural capital in the 19th century, becomes Ljubljana. Today, also capital. Building of schools, building of types, and everything was calculated. These are archival images of research, no? that we have done. We could really see and face this enormous economical and infrastructural project that had to arrive, of course, here. I'm showing Trieste, not Rijeka, because I'm talking about models. Only a couple of years later, after this infrastructure has been made, connecting Trieste and Vienna, it was possible, according to this experience, to build the other connection between Rijeka and Budapest and between Rijeka and Vienna. And this was made with the same engineers, with the same amount of technicians that were able to govern these incredible complexities. And here we can talk about the railway station made, of course, by a Hungarian architect, but that only, let's say, put a decorative ending, no, on this great thing. Everything that comes later or parallelly is thanks to these two great achievements, the port and the railway. And the scale of the building that we can almost compare to the Ring of Vienna or to the palaces of Budapest can find also now a reason to be also in Rijeka. We know, probably Mario told you about the growth of this port. This port became, in just 3 decades, one of the fifth most important port in terms of tons of goods that go through in the Mediterranean Sea, after Marseille, after Trieste, of course, after Genova, and Venice. And everything that you will see still here, no, this process of accumulating, no, all the activities around this infrastructure is something that is still today visible in the city. I will just go quickly to the last part of this Austro-Hungarian story, which is extremely important to probably, I will repeat some of the topics that Mario told you yesterday, but also tourism is an invention of the 19th century. And as a matter of fact, I would even say that it is a kind of political and economic project in order to make even more, let's say, exploitable, even more easier to cover the enormous investment that has been done with the railway. Now, from Vienna to Rijeka, you can practically, or from Budapest to Rijeka, you can reach in 12, 14 hours, something that before the railway it was a couple of days. And this myth, because we are entering in the process of mystification and the creation of mythologies, no, that will explode with the First World War, the mythology of the Mediterranean and the mythology of the tourism is something that had to be offered to the new public and the new scale of the empire, which, let's say, condenses itself after the creation of this infrastructure. And this is the bourgeois, no? The entire medium-high bourgeois of the entire empire can reach the sea, no? and feel this. The model is Trieste, and quickly Rijeka and also other parts, like smaller, like Crikvenica, Veliloshinyi, and so on, will slowly endorse this project. This project was partially organized and financed by an economic colossus of that time, of the family Rothschild, who gave credits and economic, let's say, help to hospitals and privates to invest in what we call the creation of these new cities, foundation cities of the 19th century, but that we have a lot of examples in the Istro-Dalmatian coast, which is a new economy, a new possibility that has been created again thanks to this. About architecture, everything stops in 1918. Everything that was this, let's say, process of geopolitical investment in the city stops when Austro-Hungarian empire collapses after the First World War. And as you probably heard yesterday, the dramatic aspect of this disgregation is because the foundation of a border that was never there, a border that practically will move starting from 1918 till 1975 in this entire territory, and happens something that the Austro-Hungarian model could not sustain. And I repeat, no, the foundation of this great political movement of the formation of identities that emerged in 19th century in Europe, and we still today live this crisis. the crisis of two models. No? The models are the Austro-Hungarian and the German. Two different models. Former multinational state that didn't build its national identity on the ethnic aspect. On contrary, it was very inclusive. Everybody who wanted to participate in the project could enter. All identities and religions were accepted. And as Carlo, you can even lift the scale of the, we can say, something like an American 20th century project of national building, nation building. And on the other side, we have the German one, which is blood and soil, no? Only, which is exclusive. No? Blood and soil are those elements who form identity, national identity. And these two models clashed everywhere in this part of Europe. The, let's say, new states that won somehow the First World War, like Yugoslavia, with the pushing element of the Yugoslavian Piedmont, which was Serbia, other states, like very important Romania, based their idea on anti-Germanism. And the identities, like Czechoslovakia, formed on this idea of German model. While this part here, that what is not, was, and till, let's say, 1945, was the periphery. The periphery of what? Of all these national identities that were emerging in the 19th century. Because this, as you have seen in this ethnographic map, was nothing else than the periphery of three great national, let's say, identities that lived in this northern part of the Adriatic Sea. And this is the Italian one, the Slavic, which is Croatian, Slovenian, etc., and German. With the fourth factor that emerges in the 19th century, as I already said, which is Hungarian. They coexisted always, lived in this area. And it was impossible to, in this clash of the Austrian, I'm talking about now identity, Austro-Hungarian, the clash, this national, which was based on the German one. Each of these new identities that re-emerged after 1918 worked against the old model. I'm so sorry, as historians, we are complicating things, and we cannot stop complicating, but everything will be then reconnected to infrastructure and geopolitics, you will see. But according to something that was the political decision what to do after the clash of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, it's called the London Memorandum, or say, il Patto di Londra, I said Italian. So it was something very boring and so on, but that substantially decided that this border here had to be traced somewhere, between the two states that won the First World War, Yugoslavia, so the Kingdom of Yugoslavia, and the other side, the Kingdom of Italy. So where to put this border? According to London treaties, this entire area, which was Austro-Hungarian, which was somehow Latin and Romanic in its culture, had to become definitely part of Yugoslavia. Italy obtained much more than Italy wanted before the First World War. They obtained Trentino Alto Adige, the entire Friuli Venezia Giulia, wanted a little bit more, but substantially obtained much more than they expected. Finally, they obtained Trieste. But it was, we are in 1919, and something very important is emerging in Italy. And this is the emergence of fascism. No, not in political terms, this will happen in 22, but in the, let's say, cultural, as a cultural movement, as a nationalistic and political movement, started to emerge. And what happens, especially with the Italians that live in Zara, Spalato, Fiume, and those cities? Well, they are not really happy about being, of course, under the kingdom. They felt themselves not as Italians because they were not participating. They were extremely rich thanks to the entire empire that now doesn't exist anymore. So the sense of Rijeka had to be reinvented completely. Well, in these terms, now they are asking and calling for a new Garibaldi. Garibaldi died a couple of decades before, and they had to invent another figure. And this another figure is this crazy, extremely contradictory poet who is, like history, like complexity is always contradictory, and he was really the representative of this first Italian fascism, a contradiction that is inherent in, so on the same time he is an incredibly avant-garde and nationalist at the same time. He's extremely open in this Carta del Quarnaro, which everybody talks about, but is totally, let's say, ultra convinced about the superiority of the Italian nation. So something complete. And substantially was not even interested in Fiume. He was called to organize this kind of invasion, taking these warriors who, after the First World War, didn't know where to go, between the bars and osteria, drinking wine. He collected this army, entered in Rijeka, occupied, the story is much more complex than I did, and occupied all the spaces and the symbols of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, changing and transforming its identity. And incredibly sophisticated cultural operation of mythologization and transforming the identity of this city. Starting to insert, thanks to the help, of course, of the fascist, first emerging fascist, Mussolini himself, promoting what? This is very interesting. On one side, the reason was local, but the local reason is, according to much more important historians that I know, is really relative. The real, let's say, game that was playing, and Rijeka was just a victim, again on geopolitical scale, is to organize the so-called Marcia su Roma, so the walk, to take the power in Rome, starting from where? Well, from the periphery. Well, this ethnic, nationalistic thing can be really provoked till the extreme. They coexist completely absurd mix of nationalism and multinationalism between avant-garde poets, actors, and something which is extremely problematic. And this is the progressive Italianization of the entire territory. And when you start to Italianize this enormous territory, what happens? The Germans are not anymore in these territories. The Hungarians went also out. All the, let's say, bureaucratic infrastructure of the Austro-Hungarians went. Who remained? Only Slavic population. And the moment when the nuncio is in Rijeka, only after a few months will the symbolic palace, Narodni Dom in Trst, will be burned. Like same things will happen in Nova Gorica with Trgovski Dom, made by Max Fabiani, very important architect of that time, or in Pula, all the Radnički domovi, worker houses in Pula, but in all Istria will be attacked and burned by the fascists. So this systematic will bring to a series of very dramatic conflicts that will characterize the horrific fascist presence in these territories. Of course, D'Annunzio creates a myth of this, a myth of his presence, and especially a myth of his entrance in Rijeka. He's trying even to defend Rijeka because it's a very complicated story, but Italians send carabinieri here to say, D'Annunzio, come on, you have to go out because Rijeka was promised to Yugoslavia, said that there is a war, people die, and completely, and he creates a kind of myth of this battle, no, between Italians. But Italians in Rijeka denied D'Annunzio, while they accepted him extremely happy. Only after a few months, they understand what was going on, and they start to work against D'Annunzio, because his project is absolutely not connected with Rijeka, but to something else, and they understand that. And especially his idea of Italianity is completely adverse to their idea. I will go to the end just to, let's say, to sum up. As you know, probably from yesterday, is that, of course, I told just one part of the story. Then there is the other one, which is Sušak, which is the city of Rijeka as a part of the Yugoslavian territory. The border is, of course, where, if not on the infrastructure? Where, if not in the middle of the city that has to divide the possibility of using this port by two countries. There are two interests of Italy in Rijeka. Rijeka is not anymore important in terms of infrastructure, because, or better, as railway, because it cannot connect with Italy, no? There is already Trieste, so who cares? I mean, Trieste is already giving everything that Italy needs. But there are other two things that are extremely important for Italians. One is, of course, the factory that probably Mare talked about, the Torpedo, and the other one is another infrastructure that I did not talk about today, and that is the Raffineria, another infrastructure made by Austrians, or better, Hungarians, which until 1936 was the only raffinery on the Italian territory. The Italian territory, of course, between the two wars. And this raffinery, in this raffinery was founded Agip, the modern Italian distributor of oil, that was quickly moved to Genova as soon as possible, no? In understanding. When the war, I wanted to finish because I have so many slides. Yes, what happens after during this horrible war and till, as I said, 1975, the situation is not good. Well, the new border, no, creates what? Creates the situation that practically the new border is the border between the two liberations. The two liberations from one side of the Yugoslavian, the partisans, a liberation that is curiously addressed to Trieste as soon as possible. The partisans enter in Trieste before they enter in Rijeka, before entering in Zagreb, before Ljubljana. So Trieste has been liberated before, let's say, 1/3 of the Yugoslavian territory of the North. So it was an extremely geopolitical act by Tito and by the partisans to be where? In the port of Trieste as soon as possible. 1 day before the New Zealand corps that are coming and liberating Italy from the south and have been stopped by the partisans here on the river Isonzo. Don't worry. We liberated Trieste, you can go up. And then this crisis, geopolitical starts. Americans and British came to put some kind of peace, but substantially this act of moving the border from the Rapallo border, where we assisted to the crisis between Italy and Yugoslavia in the 20s, has been moved by 120 kilometers toward west. I will shorten this up, of course, ignoring completely about the identities that have been deposited on these territories for centuries. I'm not talking about the relationship between the Italian population and fascism. This is a very complex story. But in fact, no, this border has been again moved. And this process of moving that has been solidified by an American general, whose name is Morgan, has been somehow fixed in this 1947, and finally, with the 1954, became fixed. But of course, this produced, also according to the complex situation of the Italian invasion of Yugoslavia and of these territories in the beginning of the century, provoked something that we can discuss and it's really problematic, about 360,000 Italians that left these territories in these years. Okay, I will just finish because I'm not able to synthesize things. So I will probably, Maro told, but Rijeka is full of symbols, no? Full of architectures, full of things where you can read this story. I will just finish with maybe the most famous one that really replicates this conflict, geopolitical absurdity, no, not absurdity in terms of in general terms, I mean, all complex problems, but absurdity on the local level that produces this conflict between the geopolitical interest and the identity. So we are talking about this, no? The symbol of Rijeka, no? Which is this eagle with two heads, and this eagle was a donation, symbol that was donated by the Habsburg monarchy. It's a complex story, but that is here on this barocchetto, neo-barocco, in the very important street, as you probably have seen, no? The Corso, which is not only symbolical, but historically very important because it was also the border between this old city and the great infrastructural works that have been done. So this was once the sea, the border between the medieval city, and that has been covered, and this beach now is the main symbolic Corso of the city. And here, this architecture, this sculpture dominates. Let's say during 120, 150 years, this sculpture was there, no? Giving identity to this city and its inhabitants in this multicultural, multi-ethnic system. The funny thing is when D'Annunzio comes, the first act is to attack the symbol. But as everything during D'Annunzio occupation, which was a mixture of fascism and poetry, really complex, he sent his arditi, his soldiers, and he didn't destroy it, but he cut one head. And he cut one head, why? I mean, very simple, because from the Austro-Hungarian double eagle became a Roman, one eagle, no? Symbol of Romanità. And his furfante colonizzatore, probably you know it, but he brought it back to Vittoriale, and this is a trophy, no? Like the French colonists of the 19th, or British colonists of the 19th century went to Africa and took the lion head and brought it to their homes and guarded as the trophy, as a war trophy. So this eagle, for a couple of decades, is just with one head. And after the Second World War, well, Italians left, this eagle disappeared because it was symbolically unacceptable. It was a bourgeois symbol. It was a symbol of, let's say, of the identity that doesn't exist anymore. And somehow it also was a symbol about just Rijeka, not now the new Rijeka, Rijeka and Sušak, which is a new urban complexity. No? Are two cities that now are one. So this cannot be anymore a symbol, of course, till recent times. We are in 2017, and the mayor and the city administration decided to bring back this symbol on the top. Of course, in the preparation of something that was incredibly important for this city, and this was the European city capital, promoting a symbol of a city of the past, of the diversity, of the multi-ethnic, multicultural, in the moment of history where it has the less amount of multi-historical, multi-ethnical component in its entire population. Because after we lost Germans, of course, Hungarians, Italians, etc., during the last Balkan wars in Yugoslavia, we lost also a large amount of population from Serbia and from Bosnia. So this symbol that was substantially, also if I may say, this is the only judgment that I give today, it's a really ugly sculpture, that was in some kind of way doing the same things that D'Annunzio has done, no? But without this conscience, no? Of mystifying process of mystifying its own history and soul, but doing what? Creating an identity. No? An identity that is, again, I repeat, a construct, political construct of promoting diversity that doesn't exist anymore. So, thank you.